what he stands for, and why, despite some of his ideas sounding good, he's incredibly dangerous to public health. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the nephew of former President John F. Kennedy. He first became popular in the 1990s as an attorney suing factories that were dumping pollution into New York's Hudson River. Good stuff. However, in 2005, he began his public crusade against mercury and vaccines, and eventually joining the team at World Mercury Project in 2015, which abruptly changed its name to Children's Health Defense in 2018, where he served as chairman and sold shirts with this slogan. In 2023, he jumped into the presidential race as a Democrat, but when that didn't work out, he swapped to independent. And when that didn't work out, he dropped out and backed Republican Donald Trump in hopes of securing a cabinet position. I highlight this only to show that this issue isn't left.
Dr. Mike is like a long time, like I'm pretty sure he was like one of the first like YouTube doctors, to make a YouTube channel and then blow up or something. Yeah. So he was one of the first.
Right or center. It's simply about telling the truth and getting accurate health information to you. Shortly after Trump took office, he assigned Kennedy to fix our healthcare system.
I'm going to let him go wild on health. I'm going to let him go wild on the food. I'm going to let him go wild on medicines.
But he still needed to be confirmed by the US Senate. During that process, he...
Is this the Dr. Mike that bashed Ian? Yes. This is the same Dr. Mike that sent Ian to the Shadow Realm. Yeah.
Stated over and over that he is not anti-vaccine.
I am not anti-vaccine. I have never been anti-vax.
And if we listen to some of his previous statements from 2014, it might seem like...
By the way, honestly, props to iDubbbz, okay? Like, I will say props to iDubbbz for challenging Dr. Mike, because Dr. Mike is like fit as fuck, okay? This guy is like a fucking hunk. Alright, so
like he was telling the truth.
I am very pro-vaccine.
This guy's terrifying.
I had all 6 of my children vaccinated. I believe that vaccines are critical to public health, that vaccines have saved hundreds of millions of lives, and they save millions of lives every year. And they've succeeded in eradicating, or nearly eradicating, many of these epidemic illnesses.
In fact, at the time, his focus was mostly on mercury, and he was honest about his lack of knowledge about vaccines.
I know very little about vaccines. What I know a lot about is mercury.
Dude, what happened to this guy? Jesus Christ.
However, now it's 2025, and we have a decade's worth of proof that RFK Jr. is, in fact, anti-vaccine.
There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
Remember how he just said his kids are vaccinated and he's pro-vaccine? Well, he said this in 2020.
If your kids were young now, would you give them...
Dude, Dr. Seth's YouTube channel when? This could be you, Dr. Seth. All right, think about it. Do fucking medical videos? So based, dude.
The measles, the mumps vaccine?
No.
In fact, I don't understand how what he's doing is not perjury. I thought you weren't allowed to lie to Congress.
I have never told the public avoid vaccination.
I see somebody on a hiking trail with carrying a little baby, and I say to them, better not get them vaccinated.
He really believes kids who get even 1 to 2 vaccines are not as bright as those who are unvaccinated.
If you've ever compared an unvaccinated kid to a vaccinated kid, you see
later.
The bright eyes and the engagement and the social interactions and the curiosity and the affection and you compare them. The child even had...
Dude, what the fuck? Did vaccines like burn down his house and steal his kids or something? Like, Jesus. Did vaccines kill like President Kennedy? Was vaccines the fucking crow's nest sniper? The fucking Oswald was working for big vaccine.
1 or 2 vaccines, and they're completely different.
Even in a more dark analogy, he compares modern doctors to Nazis for vaccinating children.
To me, this is like Nazi death camp. I mean, what happens to these kids? I can't tell you why somebody would do something like that. I can't tell you why ordinary Germans participated in the Holocaust. I can't tell you what was going on in their minds.
Okay. I must not bite the bait, okay? Loki is intentionally baiting me,
the
okay?
justifications they use.
Despite all that being widely available, he was confirmed in February 2025 as the U.S. Secretary of
Loki just can't stop seeing destiny in me, okay? All right? She basically thinks we're the same exact person at this point.
Health
What the
and Human
fuck?
Services, putting him in charge of some
I've never felt so dehumanized. I've never felt so dehumanized.
of the most important health
What the
agencies
fuck?
like the
I'm not my own person anymore.
CDC,
I'm just
FDA,
destiny.
and NIH. And
It's
despite
fucked
all
up.
his advocacy against vaccines, that vaccinated children are no longer bright, that doctors are basically Nazis, that he would happily go back and not vaccinate his own kids, he is now back to saying,
The best way to prevent the spread of measles is through vaccination. We urge people to get their MMR vaccines.
it seems RFK swaps his position on vaccines whenever he sees fit. Ironic, because many criticize the CDC for changing their medical guidance. But at least that's done in response to new scientific data. Now with him at the helm of the world's most prestigious medical entity,
Just
I think
shut
it's
the
more
fuck up,
important than
Rat.
ever to fact check
What
some of
the
the worst myths he's propagated.
I don't think there's any scientific question that vaccines cause autism if you actually read.
Yo. All right, people, load up the W area. Guys, everybody load up W area. Everybody load up W area now, okay? I'm a guy. I'm a guy. I'm a guy. I'm a guy.
What?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Holy shit. Thank you for the five gifted memberships, okay? Holy shit. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, okay? Yeah. This was for you, okay? Alright.
The science.
If you read the science, and the science is very clear on this,
Good content, thank you. Listen, I debate for the content, okay?
that there is no causal link between autism and vaccines. And there's been many studies that have looked at millions of children, comparing children who have been vaccinated versus those who haven't been vaccinated, and have seen that there is no causal link. When I was doing my debate with vaccine skeptics, one of the participants said that's because the people looking at it are part of the corrupt American capitalistic system. But then the research that was done on over 500,000 children in Denmark, which has nothing to do with the US capitalistic system, also found the same exact result. This is because there is no causal link. The only link between autism and vaccines that exists is that the timelines sort of match up from a correlation standpoint. And just because two things happen at the same time,
Yeah, and you know, you have to wonder, like, why do you think this is the case? Why do you think that, you know, autism and vaccine correlation exists? Bonus brownie points to anyone who figures this out, okay? Why do you think this exists? I'll give the answer in a bit, okay?
doesn't mean they caused one another. The same way that we could look at this picture, or we could look at the
By the way, in statistics, in AP statistics, I learned, right, and also college statistics, okay, we call this phantom correlation, all right, phantom correlation, all right, search it up, or something. It's something related to it, okay? Like, for example, all right, I think, like, as Tom Cruise, the more Tom Cruise movies that come out, the more people die from drowning. All right, why do you think this is the case? Think about that, right?
trending graph of organic food sales. It's important to study and see if there is causation. And when it comes to vaccines and autism, there is no causation. And I have to say that over and over again, that this has been proven internationally, millions of children tested to this, and this needs to be put to bed.
Because the MMR vaccine contains a lot of aborted fetus debris and
Okay.
DNA particles.
Yo, Silver King, thank you so much for the 5 gift. Oh, holy shit. Okay, you guys are popping off today. Okay, you guys are popping off. I'm a guy.
What?
Dude, based. Silver King, thank you so much for the 5, okay? Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. Oh yeah, guys, let me know if you guys are playing Elden Ring, Night Ring. Okay, I'm looking for people to play with. All right. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Thank you so much for the 5. I appreciate it. And W Silver King. Yes, everyone put W Silver King in the chat right now, okay?
Problem with making statements like there's fetal debris in a vaccine.
The more Foodshops makes content, the more money his fans lose. Correlation phantom. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll give the answer. I'll give the answer to the why people, why like kids, why correlation of autism and vaccines is the same. Okay, the reason this is the same is because around the same time that kids undergo a lot of tests, kids will get diagnosed for autism around the same time that kids will also receive a lot of vaccines. All right. A lot of parents bring their kids to autism tests in order to see whether or not they have autism or not. Okay. Around the same age. When you are a kid, you are also brought in to get a bunch of vaccines. Okay. To get to up to date for your vaccines. However, that does not mean that vaccines cause autism. And I'll give another terrific example of correlation is not causation. Okay. So you might remember when I said something along the lines of, why is it that whenever Tom Cruise movies come out, right, that people die from drowning throughout the year? Well, do you know why? It's because around the summertime, when Tom Cruise movies come out, right, is when these summer blockbuster films tend to come out. And what do you think people do in the summertime? People tend to go and swim. All right, people go swimming in the summertime. So swimming deaths are going to spike during summertime. All right, that does not mean Tom Cruise movies are causing people to drown. All right, or inspiring people to go swimming. Okay, so again, all right, we have two things that are correlated. They have the same line. All right, however, at the same time, it's a phantom correlation. Okay, correlation is not causation, and you guys will do well to remember that. Okay. All right.
Is that it's just factually untrue. The MMR vaccine contains 3 components, measles, mumps, and rubella. The measles and mumps components have nothing to do with fetal tissue, fetal DNA, because they were made in chick embryos. But then the rubella component was derived from viruses grown in human cells. But we need to be able to get human cells from somewhere in
Okay, but where does Scientology fit in the analogy? I'm pretty sure Tom Cruise and his wife quit Scientology like years ago, no? I'm pretty sure they're no longer in Scientology. I mean, at some point, like, they were probably in Scientology, okay? But, like, yeah. I think they just quit at some point because they realized it was too toxic.
in order to have the virus replicate and be used in the vaccine. That's literally what we do. We allow the virus to replicate, we weaken it, and we put it in a vaccine so that your body gets a weakened virus exposure,
they did.
not the real one. So you build up immunity and don't have to have all the negative repercussions of actually being sick. Now, for the rubella component, the cells in which the virus was grown were gathered from two...
Okay, never mind. He's still a practicing... Hold on. What? They're still in Scientology? Okay. He is reputedly at the highest level, operating Thetan level 8 of Scientology. Oh, that's just great. Fuck me, dude.
Elective and ethical abortions performed over 50 years ago.
Oh, thanks for that pic, Silver King.
And since then, we've been reusing those cells. That's how we do science. We reuse old cells.
Dude. I have so many Mexicans watching me. Correlation, causation, okay? Does that mean I'm Mexican? Ooh.
But there is no fetal tissue. There is no fetal debris. This is just illogical coming from someone who doesn't understand how science works. It's just physically not there. And the presence of DNA particles
he's level 8,
is so tightly controlled that it's to the billionth of a gram, a picogram, because...
By the way, to be fair, okay, a lot of Mexicans actually have Asian features, you know, which is really interesting.
There are potential complications if there are high amounts of DNA present. It's all monitored. There is no fetal tissue. There is no fetal debris. This is an overstatement that is made by someone who is consistently fear-mongering about the vaccine. The best evidence indicates that Dr. Offit's rotavirus vaccine causes negative net public health impacts. In other words, Dr. Offit's vaccine almost certainly kills and injures more children in the United States than the rotavirus disease killed and injured prior to the vaccine's introduction. Now, I've heard RFK Jr. say that he's really good at reading scientific research.
I'm comfortable reading science and dissecting it and discerning the difference between junk science and real science.
I don't think he does know the difference between junk science and real science, because prior to 2006, before the vaccine was available, rotavirus, which is an intestinal virus that leads to massive diarrhea, vomiting in young children, it hospitalized 50 to 70,000 children in the United States per year. After the implementation of the rotavirus vaccine from Dr. Paul Offit, those rates have fallen by 50,000. And while yes, in a developed country like the United States, the death rate was low, 50 to 60 deaths a year, in developing nations like India, where there isn't good access to medical care for many people, the deaths were much, much higher. So not only are we preventing hundreds of thousands.
Oh, cross-country studies are pretty important, okay? Just FYI. Yeah. Cross-country stuff is pretty good. Just mainly because, like, obviously, you know, maybe it's only in this one country. Oh, wait, hold on. It's also found in another country based, right?
Thousands of doctor and ER visits. We're preventing tens of thousands of hospitalizations in the US, and we're saving over 100,000 lives across the globe. This vaccine is what a scientific miracle looks like. The fact that he's not seeing that and seeing it as a net negative, I just don't understand what research we're looking at.
And my nickname was Chinese, all because I had small eyes. Oh, it's almost as if your eyes did not actually matter, because you literally got approached by a girl at the gym and then she gave you her Discord. All right, so, you know, turns out the eyes, you don't actually need the eyes, okay?
Throughout his book, he makes certain references to children having side effects of this vaccine. But when he's looking at the pamphlet that comes with the vaccine, he's just looking at children having conditions. He's not comparing the children in the unvaccinated group to the vaccinated group, because through natural incidents, kids have all sorts of conditions. Kids who were vaccinated have headaches, and kids who are unvaccinated have headaches. The question is, does the rate of headaches go up? And the answer is pretty much no. Probably the most viral claim RFK Jr. has made in his years has been tying mercury, specifically thimerosal, which is a preservative ingredient used in vaccines in the 1990s. He famously wrote an article titled Deadly Immunity that was published in Salon and Rolling Stone magazine, when a study revealed that mercury in childhood vaccines may have caused autism in thousands of kids. The government rushed to conceal the data and to prevent parents from suing drug companies for their role in the epidemic. But the article is so poorly written, it had to be corrected 5 times before finally being retracted. The editor who published it literally states that it was the worst mistake of her life. The ironic part was that on July 1st, 1999, 6 years before the article was written, the FDA already sent a letter to all US vaccine manufacturers requesting them to remove thimerosal as a precautionary measure. Currently, all routine vaccines recommended for children 6 years of age and younger are available in formulations that do not contain thimerosal. And to reiterate, this was a precautionary move, as no research has found any increased health risk from presence of the ingredient in vaccines. And let's run the hypothetical and say that he did uncover some sort of link between autism and thimerosal. Then we should have seen autism rates crumble once thimerosal was removed. But that didn't happen because thimerosal wasn't to blame. And it didn't stop him, by the way, when this article was removed. He went on to write a book about this. You
know what's funny? You can literally make the argument, yeah, technically rates of autism in children are going to be drastically decreased if you don't take your children to the doctor. You can technically make that argument, okay? I'm just saying, all right? By not taking your children to the doctor, yeah, technically the rates of autism will go down, all right? Because they go unreported then, right? It's kind of the same thing.
2014.
We are 4.2% of the world's population. We buy 70% of the pharmaceutical drugs on Earth.
We are about 4% of the global population here in the United States, but we do not buy 70% of the world's drugs. We buy around 6 to 8%. 6 to 8. That's a big difference. And some might say, well, he's talking about money spent on medications. Well, yeah, because we're usually the ones launching them first, so we have first access. But even then, we spend about 40 to 50%, not 70.
When I was a kid, I always say this, a typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes in his lifetime. Today, it's 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door.
No, not 1 of 3 children is diabetic in the United States. Up to age 18, 0.3 something, less than 0.4%.
Dude, can you imagine if 1 in 3 kids is actually diabetic? Holy shit. What? You just described Japan's DV policy? I don't know what that means.
Of children have diabetes. That's type 1 and type 2. That means 1 in 300, not 1 in 3.
The way RFK speaks makes me unreasonably angry. Okay. You might have a thing against his, throat issue then.
I mean, that level of hyperbole is dangerous.
20 years ago, there was no diabetes in China. Today, 50% of the population is diabetic.
50% of China is not diabetic.
Dude, what? Oh, dude. What? 50% of China is diabetic? Well, damn, my family must be really going through it. Holy shit. Fuck, that explains so much.
The rate is somewhere around 12
It must be because KFC moved to China.
to
That's probably why.
13%, which is still incredibly high. I mean, if someone was going out and butchering statistics like this over and over again as a resident to me, I would file a report that they need to study more, that they need to do some sort of remediation. But this is the person who's at the head, the top of these agencies.
Ooh, he literally just said, if RFK was doing a residency under me, I would be getting rid of him. Boom.
Doing it over and over and over again. And people are allowed to make mistakes. I'm not about catching someone in a gotcha. But he makes these mistakes over and over and over again and doesn't issue a correction. That's a problem. Something that I noted even in my debate.
Isn't like 50% of the Chinese still living under poverty line? How could they have diabetes? Well, I don't know. Maybe they're eating like sugared rocks. Okay, who the fuck knows?
On Jubilee was that RFK Jr. does not believe HIV causes AIDS. In fact, in a New York Magazine interview published in June 2023, he told the reporter, nobody knows whether HIV is the sole cause of AIDS. There are much better candidates than HIV for what causes AIDS. Now, if you're trying to be charitable, you might say, well, maybe he thinks a different virus causes AIDS. But let's see.
There's a lot of people that said it's not a virus. The virus is a passenger virus. And these people are dying mainly because of poppers. 100% of the people who died in the first, of the first 1,000 who had AIDS were people who were addicted to poppers.
The party drug poppers is what our Secretary of Health and Human Services believes is causing AIDS. I struggle to coherently explain why that's wrong because it's such a ridiculous claim to make when we've dropped the death rate and increased the longevity of someone who has HIV because of antiviral medication. To then say that it's because of illicit drug use.
I'm gonna say this, okay? Don't get mad at me. Yeah, I think the Democrats and Republicans are not the same, okay? Okay, I know.
Use.
Right.
Just the logic is flawed on so many levels that there's clearly an HIV denialism happening here that is devoid of any scientific factual logic. Continuing on his crusade to demerit the MMR vaccine, RFK Jr. now claims that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine is not very useful because those who are elderly lose their immunity.
The vaccine wanes about 4.5% per year. So that means older people are essentially unvaccinated.
That's just not true. The Lancet just did a great study on this, showing that the vaccine wanes 0.04% per year. So I don't know if he misread the study, but again, we're having this issue with statistics. And that's a very big difference because if you factor this out,
I'm pretty sure like most Americans don't have a basic grasp on fundamental elementary statistics. And I think that's like one of the biggest issues ever.
Over someone's lifespan, 0.04% and 4% is a drastically different outcome for someone who's 60 or 70 years of age. That being said, is it possible that someone who's 75 loses their immunity despite getting the vaccine as a child? Yeah, it's possible. In fact, for some jobs, I have to do something known as MMR titers to confirm that they are immune to these conditions because they might be exposed to them being healthcare workers, as an example. But to say that it's 4.5% annually, just not accurate.
I'm not against vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine.
I think Foodshops is disappointed in her fans. No.
That's something that's said about me to, make me look crazy, like a conspiracy theorist. What I've said is let's have testing for each of the vaccines to make sure that they are that they're safe and effective. Vaccines are the only medical product that is not safety tested prior to licensure. And we need placebo-controlled trials.
I can't believe I have to educate the person who's in charge of the CDC, FDA, and NIH, but vaccines do undergo placebo randomized controlled studies. COVID vaccines ran through tens of thousands of people in randomized control placebo trials. When you have a completely new vaccine, you're doing placebo randomized controlled studies. But if you already have a vaccine that you know the safety profile for, and you know that it works, so you've tested it, now you no longer need to test it against placebo. You only need to test it against the new version of the vaccine. Then you can compare the safety rates, the effectiveness rates, and he says that this is somehow different than the pharmaceutical industry. It's not. The pharmaceutical industry works in the same way, that when you have a novel medication, absolutely you do randomized controlled studies. But when you have a new medication that works in the same way,
I'm pretty sure for medication here in the United States, we have the most strict guidelines in terms of releasing new information, new medication. Yeah, like a lot of the stuff that we use, like even though we are at the forefront of a lot of new medication and stuff, the amount of money and time that goes into clinical tests and this kind of stuff is like a very, very costly, I think.
way you can compare it to the
Like billions and billions and billions of dollars for one thing.
standard of care. And the reason that we do this, scientifically speaking, is because it's unethical to withhold treatment in a randomized placebo-controlled trial when you know something works and is beneficial. So what we do is instead, we randomize into two groups. One group gets the existing vaccine that we know the safety profile of and the effectiveness, and we compare it to the new one. Vaccines
Yeah, the best clinical research, yes. Yeah.
are incredibly well tested. In fact, they're more well tested than pharmaceuticals because they're given to people who are healthy. We have a higher threshold for side effects.
I think it's a good example of like, oh, we have the most strictest guidelines. Yes, that's true. We have the most strict guidelines, but at the same time, you know, we are also at the forefront of so much of so much medical technology, right? Why? Because our tests are so solid to the point where it's incredibly reliable. Everything is so incredibly reliable. It's accurate. It's good.
Effects
Yeah.
in pharmaceuticals because those people are actually sick and have an issue. But when you
That's why
give
the
something
world
to a
uses
healthy
our
person,
medicine.
you have to have a higher bar of safety. That's why we have the vaccine safety data net that actually monitors vaccines after they've been administered. And this is to the tune of millions of doses of vaccines. The fact that he said that they're not tested is again the crusade of trying to discredit vaccines. Then came the beef tallow oil. Literally, Charlie Kirk tweets that RFK ate Steak and Shake on live TV, the fast food joint that's bravely frying everything in beef tallow. That is the way, Maha.
We are poisoning ourselves, and it's coming from, principally these ultra-processed foods. And what we're trying to do, and this President Trump wants us to have radical transparency and to incentivize companies like this one to switch to traditional ingredients like beef tallow.
Oh, by the way, here you go.
We're talking about making people healthy. You're eating.
Oh my god, my mom is the kind of person who would unironically believe RFK so fast. Oh my god. She is so anti, medicine and everything. Dude. Oh my god.
Fast food. And I'm not villainizing fast food, but if you're gonna be talking about making substantial improvements to the health of the United States, you should be talking about removal of those foods. In fact, it's not the chemical, it's not the oil that's the issue. It's the fact that we're over-consuming ultra-processed foods. The Maha report that was just
Did she give you homemade potions? Hell no. But she loves the fucking Chinese remedy shit. Oh my god, so cringe.
put out a few days ago talks about the overconsumption of ultra-processed foods, yet they're eating it as an example, celebrating restaurants that are serving the thing.
When I was a kid, McDonald's was made with tallow fat. That was good for you. Your body needs that. It makes you healthy.
Can you imagine saying McDonald's fries make you healthy as someone who's in charge of a health agency? I mean, he's just fully making things up. In America, we're over-consuming saturated fat. We're over-consuming ultra-processed foods. His own report states that, and yet he's celebrating fast food, celebrating how McDonald's used to fry their foods in beef tallow.
Almost all of the Falconers who I grew up with in the Hudson Valley have serious problems now with brain fog and with other symptoms of Lyme disease. And the idea that this may have been is highly likely to have been a military weapon.
It's highly likely that this was Lyme disease is a military weapon. Is with 100% certainty wrong. 60,000 years ago, there's traces of Lyme disease. We have ticks preserved in amber from dinosaur days because they fed on dinosaurs. So the fact that he's extrapolating all these thoughts.
Well, are you saying that dinosaurs can't create military-grade bioweapons?
That have no scientific basis is really scary.
There are plenty of studies that make it clear that SIDS is caused by vaccines. SIDS really appeared following the first vaccine.
There are no studies showing that. The reason some people have considered an association is because of the timing. A lot of the first vaccines are given at 2 to 4 months of age, and SIDS peaks at 2 to 4 months of age. So people thought that there could be an association. And when research has studied it, we have seen that there is no relationship. In fact, if you truly look at the data, you actually have seen in the research that if your child is up to date with vaccines, you have a lower risk of SIDS in some instances. And notice how I'm hedging it. It would be really easy based on the strength of that association for me to say vaccines decrease risk of SIDS, but I don't because I'm honest to the data in saying that there is some preliminary evidence showing that keeping up to date with vaccines can lower the chance of your child having sudden infant death syndrome. But RFK sees two things happen at the same time. He doesn't even care what the evidence shows. He just says that they must be causing one another. Many people who are frustrated with our healthcare system for being too reactive and not preventive forget that some vaccines are preventive for not just regular illness, but also cancer. More specifically, the HPV vaccine, also known as the human papillomavirus vaccine, because that virus actually ends up causing cervical cancer. So by getting kids vaccinated, we actually have seen a tremendous drop in cervical cancer rates. That didn't stop RFK Jr. from tweeting and currently leaving this tweet up. Gardasil HPV vaccine appears to be increasing the risk of cervical cancer in vaccinated age groups. I'm gonna ignore all the COVID stuff because we're not talking about that. Let me give you some data. Sweden from 2006 to 2017. It's almost 2 million girls and women. 63% lower risk overall, 88% lower risk when you start the first dose below age 17. England, around the same time frame, 87% lower cancer rate. Multi-country meta-analysis done by the WHO, 50% drop in high-grade lesions within a decade of the program starting. In the United States,
I wonder why HPV, I wonder why HPV is so good then in this instance. Like, what is it about HPV vaccines that cause cervical cancer rates to fall like a rock?
done with the CDC, with the National Precancer Surveillance Center, 80% drop in cervical precancers among 20 to 24-year-olds. It's just so obvious to see that the data is clear. When you vaccinate against HPV, specifically the high-risk subtypes that can lead to cervical cancer, you see a drop in...
Oh, like it's okay, so it leads to cervical cancer, or it increases, the sickness increases. The HPV causes cancer? Okay, I see.
cervical cancer, in precancerous lesions. And
That makes
RFK
sense.
not only doesn't see it, but sees some sort of risk that no other scientific organization in the globe, not just in the US, can see. How are we gonna get to the bottom of making people healthy if we don't do the research? We're firing scientists, we're slashing budgets by hundreds of millions of dollars. Who's gonna be doing the research?
Well, you know, they weren't doing their job, all right? So, you know.
Just don't see a plan here. There's a lot of political speak, PR stunts, promises that will remove certain dyes from kids' foods as if that's the problem. No,
But to clarify, that was a joke, okay? That's meant to be sarcastic.
the issue is the ultra-processed foods. The issue is that obesity is going up. Those are the real problems because that impacts all parts of our lives. Entrusting all of that to someone who makes statements like this
We should not be giving black people the same vaccine schedule that's given to whites.
is scary to me. Our health agencies cannot be led by someone who repeatedly denies the very science they're charged to uphold. Secretary Kennedy's long record of spreading vaccine falsehoods and undermining proven public health measures makes him a clear threat to millions of Americans who rely on accurate guidance. Certainly, he should have never been confirmed to head the office of HHS. But choosing to leave him in charge is like handing the keys to a driver who continues to insist that stop signs and red lights are optional. For the sake of our children, frontline health workers, scientists, and every family that deserves accurate healthcare guidance, we must demand his immediate resignation. Normally at this time, I would recommend you to click here and watch another one of my videos.
A lot of healthcare professionals have probably already demanded the resignation of RFK Jr. All right, to be honest. Okay. I mean, like if you even like give a fuck about your profession, because you know what, I understand some doctors and nurses do not. Okay, some doctors and nurses legitimately don't give a fuck about the profession. Okay, but you know. It degrades cells, making the body generate more cells at an accelerated rate, at least the development of immature cells. Okay, I see. Yeah.
But not today. Instead, I'm asking my American viewers to click the link at the top of my description to find out who your representatives in Congress are. From there, you can contact them via phone or email and join me in calling for
Shout out to that one brain surgeon that operated on me one time, okay? Who said that coronavirus was going to be over in 2 months. Fuck you, okay? Screw you. You suck.
Secretary Kennedy to resign from office. If you're not sure what to say, I've even included a few sentences you can copy and paste into an email or say over the phone. I can't do this alone. I need your help. And as always, stay happy and healthy.
Nice. Remember a year ago when everyone was laughing about RFK having brainworms? Looks who laughs last. The brainworm. The brainworm. As far as I'm concerned, it isn't actually RFK that's in charge anymore. Okay, it's the brainworm. All right, that worm be doing some fucking gym stunts up in there. Okay, doing fucking backflip, front flip, sideways flip. Okay, doing sidebar railing holdings are in his brain. Okay. The worm died? Yeah, that's what they want you to think, okay? That's what they want you to think. Dr. Mike is based for asking his viewers to do something. Why not? He has a lot of medical professionals who follow him. And he has a lot of viewers who follow him too. So yeah, I mean, celebrity doctor, so. But yeah. That brain surgeon died of corona food. I hope he's still alive. I hope he's still alive. Like the brain surgeon that I saw, he was a really friendly guy. And he pushed me up to the front of the line for surgery, right? When he has people that he really needs to operate on. Celebrity doctor sounds derogatory. Yeah. I mean, he's appeared on shows before, like Dr. Mike. Dr. Mike has appeared on shows before, no? He's pretty damn famous. Brainworms are not worms 90% of the time. Yeah. Wait, which commentary is the one that you came here for? Which one? Which part of it? Dr. Mike does practice. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I wonder how they balance the time. Like they must not have any free time whatsoever. Like the fact that you're practicing and you're running like a huge YouTube channel. Fuck. Oh my god, I can't imagine. Yeah. But also like yeah, he might just manage a practice. Like I'm sure he just like defers to other managers. I'm sure. Right? That's logical, no? He has enough money to pay for them. So, yeah. You know, that also reminds me of Legal Eagle. Yeah. Another high-level profession who also runs an actual business IRL, who also owns a huge YouTube channel, right? Legal Eagle. RFK is just stupid. Nothing I can say about it will change the views of someone who believes him. Yeah. Well, the thing is that you can actually change the. I feel like if you really tried, you can actually change someone's views. But the thing is that the effort is not worth it because you have to like reteach them everything about the fundamentals of understanding everything. Like you basically have to put them through elementary school again, basically. Like you have to put them through like, hey, by the way, this is how statistics work. This is how, the scientific method works. This is why we have evidence. Here's some examples that evidence, what kind of evidence is like the best kinds of evidence, right? Like there's just too much you have to like relearn to really like unbrainwash somebody. Fuck. He has balls. He was going to get hate for them for stupid people. Probably, but I'm pretty sure he's like an open liberal, right? As a former physicist, I can say that telescopes create stars. Thank you for speaking truth. We should have an actual MD running our Department of Health. Truth. Although, wait, to be fair, okay, again, there are absolutely anti-vax doctors and anti-science doctors, 100%, okay? Licensed psychologist from Europe here. I'm deeply concerned. Oh yeah, Ben Carson. Ben Carson is a brain surgeon who literally has a PhD and he's like a Trumper, so,